Ready? 1, 2, 3.
It was a terrible clap.
It was a terrible clap, but since you can't tell the difference, I just thought I'll just
But
do
we
it once.
have to proceed. Welcome to IHIP News. I've had it podcast news, where we impersonate journalists on our YouTube channel. But today we have a real live journalist with the New York Times, Michael Gold. Michael, how are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we understand that you followed a fellow by the name of former Congressman George Santos.
I did. I have spent a year reporting on and thinking about George Santos.
So almost from the onset, when he gets elected, he is immediately shrouded in controversy, and several lies, blatant lies, are starting to unravel. And what would you say the top 3 lies that George Santos, and I know that's a big, thing to narrow down, but the top 3 most salacious, we like salacious news here.
I mean, I think it's sort of hard. And the thing about this story and about Santos is that I think everybody has things that they find more egregious. I can just tell you the things that really struck me. For us, when my colleague Grace and I were reporting the story, the first thing we discovered really was that his work history was made up. He hadn't worked on Wall Street, and he had been presenting himself as kind of a wealthy Wall Street guy, right? And that's sort of one of those things that really stuck out to us. In this day and age, when you lie on your resume, there are usually consequences for that. So I think that's one that really sat with us. For me personally, as a gay man, I was really taken by this interview he did in which he said that his company at the time had multiple victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, and we could not find any evidence about that. That's one thing that just really always stuck with me. And he's pivoted and said that these were people his company was about to hire, which sort of makes it impossible for us to really verify one way or the other. But I kind of leave that for people just based, we looked at all the victim profiles and it just didn't seem to add up. And then a third one, I don't know if it qualifies as a lie, but I think one of the things that's stuck out most to people with this story is these allegations, both in the federal prosecution against him and in the House Ethics Report, that he misused campaign funds or fraudulent campaign donations for personal purchases. The House Ethics Report says that he bought luxury goods, I think at Hermes, at Ferragamo, that he used campaign money for Botox, that he used campaign money for an OnlyFans subscription. I think those are the things that really jumped out at people. He has not really addressed some of those particulars, but it's definitely a big part of the story that I think is on people's minds when they think of him.
Okay, first follow-up question to this. As a gay man, and George Santos is out of the closet, I'm always somewhat fascinated by how they reconcile their alignment with the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetz and the Jim Jordan and the Donald Trump. Has he spoken about this? Is he for gay marriage? Does he oppose gay marriage? Is he for equality?
Well, he is married to a man. So presumably he supports gay marriage just by the virtue of the fact that he is gay married. I think it's sort of interesting. You see this kind of thing with log cabin Republicans, and I don't know if Santos identifies as part of that group, where they're kind of walking this line right now. One of the interesting things about this story is another reporter on the Santos beat, as it were, uncovered photos of him from Brazil, where he lived for a time, where he was dressed in drag. There are people there who said he was kind of an amateur drag queen. Santos has said, I dressed in drag one time at a pride parade. But a lot of people, I think, are having a hard time squaring that with his view, kind of outlining that he doesn't think drag queens belong in schools. He sort of follows the party line when it comes to trans issues. He sort of has suggested that he thinks, children shouldn't be able to transition, though he's never been particularly explicit on that. And I think it's you see him sort of taking this Republican line where they say adults can kind of do what they want, but once it starts moving in toward what they say, drag queens in schools, it's sexualizing children. That's where you sort of see him move in that direction. So
I want to get into this OnlyFans subscription. Do you have any insider knowledge of what he was viewing on OnlyFans?
I have no idea. And he has sort of not addressed that particular allegation other than to accuse House ethics investigators of being like overly salacious. So yeah, I have no idea.
That's rich. Overly salacious. Okay, I have a question. Did we ever figure out where the money came from that he originally had to run? Like when he was elected 2 years, he ran 2 years before, he showed like $21,000 or whatever the number, you know better than I. And then the next year he had all this money. Do we ever figure out where it came from?
I think the number in 2020, if I remember correctly, he said he was making $55,000, and then 2 years later, when he's running in 2022, he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank and income. I don't think we have a clear understanding of the accounting. The federal prosecutors back in May, I think, said that he didn't have nearly as much money as he claimed. I don't know that we have fully figured out how much money he actually had, but by all accounts, my colleague Grace Ashford and I have sort of reported out that Santos kind of mixed politicking with business contacts. And so there are people who became donors who he also helped broker deals for. There's a story we did earlier this year, I think, about a yacht deal that he helped broker. And then the idea is that by helping facilitate this yacht deal, he was able to get a cut of the money. And that's how he's explained making money, that he basically connected rich people with other rich people, helped them make deals, and then he would get kind of a cut. But it's kind of one of the things that we're still sort of looking through and working out. And obviously, both the ethics committee and prosecutors have said that some of his money came from soliciting fake campaign donations or taking money from donors. So that might be part of it. I don't think it accounts for everything.
Let me ask about, there was some business about him writing some hot checks for the purchase of some dogs. Did he buy the dogs, and where are the dogs?
So what I'll say about that is Santos was involved with animal rescue efforts. He said that he ran an animal rescue charity. It was called Friends of Pets United. In one of his campaign biographies, he said it was a registered nonprofit, which turned out not to be true. But there are records of him holding adoption events as part of this group. There are photos. There are people who have said that he's connected with dogs. And I talked to people who worked with him in some animal rescue capacity. I don't know what happened to the dogs. Santos has denied that there was any wrongdoing with the dogs. And to be clear, I think that story is that he was up in Pennsylvania, I think, and trying to buy dogs from breeders and wrote them bad checks. And later his lawyer basically said that his checkbook was stolen. He had nothing to do with any of this. And you're speaking to, so that's, as far as we know, that's his explanation for all of that.
Okay. And then there were some also, like, it seems like anytime there was a tragedy, you already talked about Pulse, he links himself to that. He tries to link himself to the Holocaust. He tries to link himself to September 11th. And so if you'll tell us about those and any other linking to tragedies to try to pile on and be a part of, I think that's a really interesting, egregious lie.
Egregious.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that actually really moved the needle on this, because our first story published toward the end of December last year, but it wasn't until some of the Holocaust stuff started coming out that we actually really saw a lot of backlash against him. So to kind of walk you through that, since all of this is sort of linked, in one of Santos's campaign biographies, he said that his mother was in the South Tower on 9/11. That she had worked her way up and was a major female financial executive on Wall Street. That doesn't appear to be true. In her immigration paperwork, she suggested that she was a housekeeper or a home aide, and people who knew the family have said that there's no evidence that she ever worked on Wall Street. But Santos has also later said that 9/11 claimed his mother's life. And when asked about this, he said, well, I didn't say that she died on 9/11. I said that she had a 9/11 related illness. Now there's immigration, right? And look, in the district where he's running on Long Island, 9/11 is like a very potent issue. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of people in those towns who knew people who were in the towers or know families who know people. There's a lot of connections, and 9/11 related illness is huge in New York. I used to cover the city. It's just kind of a running issue here about a lot of people who were on the pile who have health problems related to that. So he has maintained that she was down there and that she got illness from this. There's immigration paperwork that she filed saying that she wasn't in the country in 2001. So he says that he doesn't know what that's about. That is, he was here, his mother was here. That's what he says about that. And then the Holocaust thing. So Santos essentially said that his grandparents were Jews who fled Russia, I think, or Ukraine, and then ended up in Belgium. And then from Belgium, they came to Brazil. He's Brazilian. That's where his parents are from. And that's the story that he's always heard. And Jewish genealogists talked to CNN, they talked to The Forward, which is a Jewish publication here, and they said based on their research, there's just no evidence to support that was true. There's some immigration paperwork that suggests that the family was already in Brazil when the war was happening. Santos has maintained that that's the story he heard that his family were escaping the Holocaust. He's kind of quibbled and said that he never said that they were Holocaust survivors, but there are times where he has said that there are Holocaust survivors in the past. So and it's a very heavily Jewish district. And so I think that was another thing that really rubbed people the wrong way. I think those are the big ones. I mean, one thing that's sort of striking is we talked about how he ran in 2020 unsuccessfully. When he's running in 2022, his grandparents, suddenly they have this Ukrainian connection because the war is going on. It seems like he's trying to kind of claim a part of that as well. And I think one thing that really has struck me about the whole situation is this is a man who really pretended all these historical ties, and now he has a place in history. I don't know that it's the one that he wanted, but no one before him has ever been expelled from the House of Representatives without being convicted of a crime or Civil War era treason. So he got a historical connection. I just don't think it's the one that he necessarily
what would y'all call this? Like tragedy piggybacking? It's like anytime there's 9/11, and you're so right. I remember Jon Stewart has fought, so hard for the victims of 9/11 and all of the lung disease and cancers that have been, from cleaning out the rubble and inhaling all of the stuff. And then you have the Holocaust, which is one of the most horrific crimes against humanity in modern history. And he piggybacks, it seems like, and then Pulse nightclub, he piggybacks on, it's like a tragedy piggybacker.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I mean, so let me ask you this. Who are his BFFs in Congress, his favorite work buddies?
That's such a good question. It's hard to say. I did not spend a ton of time on Capitol Hill before I started covering Santos. And so I saw him on the first week that he was there, which was a very chaotic week in Congress. That was back when they were electing a speaker and it took them 15 rounds. I've seen him on the Hill since. He seems to be close with kind of the far right House Freedom Caucus. So when I see him there, he's often near Lauren Boebert. Sometimes he's talking to Paulina Luna. Those sort of seem to be his people. Back at the beginning of all of this, Matt Gaetz had him on a podcast to talk about it, and Gaetz sort of seemed to be on his side as well. He's not friendly with the New York Republicans. They all really kind of distance themselves pretty quickly. And I think, the first day, supposed to be this huge day. He's coming to Congress for the first time. He has a pack of reporters. He has a pack of reporters following him around, including me. He looks very overwhelmed. He looks very besieged. And then he walks into the House chamber. It's the first day of business. Everyone is socializing. Everyone's with their family. He's basically by himself because he's so ostracized at this point. And then over the course of the week, you see him kind of find his place with these far right guys. And it's so funny, Capitol Hill is sort of a lunchroom. So when they are on the House floor, everyone kind of has their little pockets, and you always sit with the same people and you always talk to the same people. And he sort of staked out this position toward the center aisle with a lot of these guys who are maybe some of the more incendiary Republicans.
Did you ever get to interview him?
I did not. Okay. My colleague, Grace Ashford, Grace spoke to him a few times. She wrote a story about the experience, but he and I have never had a full-on conversation. We've locked eyes a few times. When he was on the Hill the first day, I was one of the first people to actually find him and start shouting questions at him. And we were both newcomers to DC, and I was lost. I think he was lost. I was looking for somewhere I thought he would be, and I ran into him outside the credit union. So we were both lost. He kind of looked at me. He kind of looked at my name tag. This is how I remember it. And then he just starts walking. And then a bunch of other people kind of caught up with him. And then I saw him in court one of the days, and it seemed like he was staring at me. It seemed like he knew what was going on. So I haven't had the chance. I haven't had the chance for a conversation. We had a brief phone call a few months ago, but that's the last time I spoke with him, and it was pretty short.
When do you think, he threatened to expose all these secrets about what's going on in the house? Do you think he'll make good on that? I know he's like dripped, just not even juicy ones. Not yet, anyway.
Well, he started talking about these other lawmakers. Some of them are the ones who voted against him. And he's some of this is information that's publicly out there. He seems to be kind of picking up on other reporting about stock tips and, some questions about the behavior of some of these people in his offices. So I don't know. He recently added, how on X/Twitter, call it what you want, you can subscribe to somebody, people can charge you to subscribe to their posts. Oh. And he started that and has promised to release Spill Tea. He has promised to spill tea, which is not a thing I would ever say about most lawmakers, but we'll see what comes out of it. I don't really know. He went on Laura Loomer's show the other night and said that he had a lot more to say. So it's possible that more will come out, but it's hard to know.
I got a notification we're on Cameo, and I got this notification yesterday. I took a screenshot of it, and it said, see Cameo's #1 earners right now. And it was
George Santos.
It was George Santos. He is Cameo's #1 earner, $500 per cameo.
Jimmy Kimmel's bought like 50 of his cameos.
Jimmy Kimmel has bought a lot of cameos. It was crazy to watch because when he joined, I think the price was initially $75. And within hours, it went up twice. By the end of the first day, it might have been, I want to say it was 150. It might have been 200 even. And then we just sort of watched it steadily climb up. And he told the outlet Semaphore that he's making more money on Cameo than he ever did in Congress.
So let me ask you this. After you cover somebody like this, and it's pretty, this is juicy journalism because there's a lot of meat on the bones with this guy. He says X, and then you can go out and verify fairly easily that these things aren't true, and it's juicy stuff. I mean, it's pretty good stuff. So you cover this guy for like a year. As a profession, is there kind of a lull or a breakup feeling or a void when your assignment is over in covering somebody like this?
That's such a good question. I started covering the Trump campaign while this was sort of playing
you got
out.
An upgrade.
Yeah, say what you want. Say what you want. I would just say that the story I'm covering got bigger. Let me put it that way. The story I'm covering got bigger. I wouldn't, but I think what I will say is you get to know, I think everyone feels this way when you have a story like this, right? You get to know something really, really, really well.
Right.
And that takes you as far as it takes you. And now I have a new subject that I'm getting to know really, really well. So,
well,
yeah, I don't know if I feel a void. It's just this was like a very interesting year. It was a very interesting year of coverage.
I think like when you go from George Santos to Donald Trump, and let's say you get assigned to someone like super boring next time. I mean, I would have to think there'd be, when you look back, I mean, obviously you don't know yet, there'd be a fondness for just all the crazy and the dopamine hits and all that. I mean, if you covered Joe Biden without the world of Trump, it would be boring. I mean, there's really nothing to it. He's kind of a bore. Like politicians should be. I get that. But if you started covering somebody else after Trump, I just feel like you're going to be a little bit bored.
She'll be reading every article of yours
you ever write
moving forward. And so we definitely want to circle back and have you back on as the election comes up. We love that subject quite extensively. So we would love to have you back. And we cannot thank you enough for joining us on our new YouTube segment. You legitimize us. You're a real
You're
New
a real
York Times
journalist.
I don't think you guys need my help, but I'm
yes, I think we do.
I'm happy to talk. I have a lot of knowledge about these two particular men, so I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, I've got some questions about the Iowa rallies already, but I'll save them.
On a personal note, thank you so much. Journalists have never been more important than they are right now. I think you guys are fighting for democracy with every single article that you write. So Michael is our new friend.
We have cool friends.
We have a friend at the New York Times. We're cool. He's cool. We're smart. He's smart. Yes.
Thanks so much.
I'm so thrilled to be here. You guys, I've told you this before, but I have a lot of long drives across the corner. You guys keep me going sometimes. So thank you for having me.
Real live New York Times journalist, because on this YouTube channel, we impersonate, much like George Santos impersonates things. We impersonate hard-hitting journalists.
Yes.
So we're just hanging out with our peers, having a conversation.
Absolutely. New York Times reporter I've had at Podcast Studio. It's all the same.
Yes. Michael Gold of the New York Times, thank you so much. This has been an episode of IHIP News with Pumps and Jen, and we will see you whenever we feel like it.
I'll tell you what I've had it with.